All right, what is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. And in today's training, we're going to be focusing on backup plans for debt. Now, this is super key for a lot of main reasons, right? Is we are taking out debt and we are starting a business slash investing. So with that does come risk. So we want to make sure we're setting ourselves up in the best possible outcomes and also preparing for the worst, right? Obviously, we go into business expecting it to work out. That's not always the case. So if we have, a plan A, B, C, D, all these different plans to fall back on in the case where, we do have some debt, we can't pay it all off and the 0% expires, what is the next step? And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about. And something I wanted to add is debt is only dangerous if you guys treat it like free money, right? The whole reason you guys are part of this program is we're not going to go out and get you 100K no interest just so you guys can go buy a new Tesla or a new pair of shoes, right? It's the whole idea is putting into assets that are going to pay itself off to essentially get the banks to buy you this asset. And then it makes enough to where you're getting a profit, it's appreciating and cash flowing. And essentially they just bought it for you for free. The only thing with this is the reason why we're able to do this is because you as the entrepreneur have decided to take on that risk. So that's why I always like learning more about people's businesses. And I always want to make sure you guys are responsible with this. So with that being said, I want to kill this fear when it comes to debt, right? Because obviously, right, there is some risk. We're taught at a young age, never get into debt. But as you can see, the top 1%, the richest people in the world, they do not follow that advice. They borrow money so they can start and scale faster because you don't want to be saving for years. And that's why we're here, right? So let's kill this fear right now that debt is bad. It's not that unless you use it irresponsibly or don't have the right game plan. So most people don't get burned by credit because of the system. They get burned because they're just using it wrong, right? They get approved for 150K and go on a shopping spree. They think it's extra money instead of leverage. So let's make sure we cancel that idea out as well. So let's go into it. Here's how to make leveraging 0% credit actually safe for you guys. So number one is, actually, I just do that. Right, credit, it's not free, it's just leverage. So use it responsibly. Only use it for a cushion while you put your savings to work. So let's go back to this one. So only use what you need and maybe have a little bit for extra cushion. So let's just say, for example, if you got approved for 100K, but you only need 30K to do what you need, then, only use the 30K. We probably don't get more than what you guys actually need. If you only need 30K, maybe get 40 or 50 just to have that extra cushion. But there's no need to have 100K because we could always go back and get more funding later. Just because you have more money doesn't mean you get to make more responsible moves. The reason why I bring that up is I know some people who have been in this space where they got more than they needed. They're investing in this, then they're like, oh, I have all this money. I want to deploy it and, be smart with this funding. I don't want it just sitting around not making me any more money. And what they did is, because they had that extra cash on the side, they just started investing in stuff that wasn't really vetted or what didn't end up working out for them. So again, I can't stress this enough, is only use what you need and have a little bit of a cushion, a little extra, but you don't need, again, if you only need 30K, then maybe have 40 or 50 max. There's no reason to get 100 because we could always get you guys more. Now, number two is put your guys' savings to work. So, right, your other option when you're starting or scaling this business, whatever you guys are doing, is, right, you would have probably spent 10 years saving 100K, right? But instead of saving for 10 years, we could get started right now with the business funding. So what I mean here is if we get you 100K in business credit funding, go invest that in your business. But that doesn't mean you get to just completely blow off all your savings that you were going to do in the beginning. So if you were already going to stack cash and save, invest that into other appreciating assets so your eggs are in more than one basket, right? Put it into something, I recommend something safe, like something, a safe stock, or REITs, REITs. Um, Personally, I put mine in crypto and Bitcoin because I really believe in that, but that could be way higher risk for some other people. I specifically only do Bitcoin. So just be safe with where you're going to put it. The savings that you were going to have, that you were going to put towards that business, don't just spend it all on shopping. Go ahead and put that into a safe asset like a high yield savings or anything. Honestly, something that's going to grow and appreciate, and something that's relatively safe based off of your guys' risk tolerance. And the reason why we want to do this is because worst case, if you can't pay that business credit, now you have an asset, that's already grown. So yes, you'll have to liquidate that to pay this back, but at least you made a little bit more money because of the appreciation. So you could still liquidate those assets and still come out ahead, more so than you would have done if you just went straight to savings. Number 3 is extend. We help you guys extend your 0% interest terms. So usually it's 12 to 18 months. Let's say you expected your ROI to be 1 year. Let's say it ends up taking 2 years, right? We could stack multiple 0% business credit cards back to back if we do this correctly and extend those 0% terms for 2 to 3, sometimes even more interest-free capital. So that gives you more time to get the ROI on your investment and actually flip it more safe versus once the 0% terms end after that 12 to 18 months, you're stuck paying interest. So we want to have that backup plan where we have cards that can extend those terms later on if we really need to. And then number 4 is stack strategically in the right sequential order. This is super important, and I'll dive a lot more deeper into this here in a sec, but I recommend hitting the top national banks first. So hit these first. The reason is because, as mentioned before, you could pass the debt off to other cards to buy yourself more time to pay back the other cards. So let's take a worst case scenario, right? Let's just say, we started with top tier national cards. Say we borrowed 100K from Chase. What we could do now is transfer that debt we could get a couple cards to US Bank, Wells Fargo, and now we transfer that 100K off the other top tier banks. Cool. Now we just bought ourselves a second year of no interest, and now we have more time to do what we need to do to make the business profitable, or at least pay those cards back, or at least even some of it, so you're not fully coming out of pocket. But let's just say, even after this, the 0% terms for a year, let's say you still didn't pay it off, then we could move that debt to some of these more smaller regional banks. We'll transfer that debt onto their new 0% business credit cards if the debt isn't paid off. And again, the result is we have more time to get the ROI. Now, let's say you still haven't paid back the credit cards. The next thing is we'll target more local, smaller banks, like, for example, credit unions, for example, and we'll apply again. If you still owe that money, transfer the debt into these smaller accounts, and then as a result, we'll have more time to pay back the cards. Now, let's say you're still in this, right? It's already been 3 or 4 years of you having this debt and it hasn't been paid back yet. Then the next thing is you could go out and open up another LLC and reapply for those previous cards again. So since we already paid those top tier banks off and that debt's onto a smaller bank, if we opened up another LLC, we could reapply for those cards again. And now you just repeated that cycle. Now you have more time to pay back the banks, right? Now you have more funds available and more time. Now, something I do want to clarify on this, I don't want you guys thinking this is like infinite money forever. You can just keep reapplying and keep passing it off. Eventually, there is going to be a point where they won't continue letting you apply for like 50, 100K from Chase just because you keep opening up a new bank or new business. So obviously tread with this lightly. I haven't reached that threshold because I also don't want to test those waters. But this is something you can do. Apply for open up another business, apply for those same cards again, pass off the debt. Beautiful. Now, let's say the other option too is if you still haven't paid that money, right? The whole time while you were starting this business, you had your savings into a lower risk, safer asset that's been appreciating for the last 4 years. So it's going to be worth more than what you put in. And now you could always liquidate those assets to pay the credit cards back. And now let's just say this is the absolute worst case scenario. Let's say you completely run out of banks to apply and you have no assets or savings to pay the cards back. You want with this, you want the debt to end up at a smaller bank. Now, this is going to sound bad, but this is just the game, and this is how to play it more smart. But let's just say you ran out of banks. You want to make sure the debt ends up at a much smaller bank, not these top tier banks like Chase, Amex, US Bank, just because you don't want to ruin your relationship with them. I personally would rather be in debt onto a smaller bank that I don't mind never having a relationship with them again. Because worst case scenario is you could always just default on these cards. I know that sounds super scary and it's weird to even have somebody say that, but like, look, this is the fact of the matter. If you find yourself in this situation, your options are very limited, and we want to make sure if that is route as a backup that we have to go, that this debt is onto a smaller bank. Again, one that you don't mind ever having a relationship with, but it would be a big no losing those relationships to these much top tier banks. And of course, your credit's going to take a huge hit. I'm not even going to sugarcoat that. But at least at the end of the day, you aren't living the rest of your life in super high interest debt that you're never going to be able to pay. Now, this is going to be very controversial for some of you guys, but I've never heard this. I know some people will have, and your option is this. If you cannot pay back the cards, your last option is going through bankruptcy. That sounds scary, but it's actually not as scary as you think it is. And let me tell you why. I'm not saying to make this your core plan. I'm just saying this is what could happen in the worst case scenario. Again, I'm not saying to go do this or rely on this, but I have a friend who, I'm not going to say who, but he got $250K in debt, all at no interest. And long story short, they weren't able to pay it back. So with the help of a bankruptcy lawyer, he was able to protect his assets. Of course, yes, his credit got tanked, but the bankruptcy wiped off all those multiple charge-offs, collections, late payments off his credit, and now it's only showing up as one bankruptcy. And because of that, literally within a year, 1 year, this blows my mind that this is how the system works. But hey, we're playing by their rules and we're going to take advantage of it. But literally within 1 year, he didn't have to pay that $250,000 in funding back. And within that 1 year, he was able to score back up to a 700 credit score and was able to still get approved for some relatively high limit credit cards with Capital One, which I was very surprised because I didn't think anyone would want to touch you after that. But look, worst case scenario, this actually isn't that bad for you. Like for me personally, I believe if I had the opportunity to borrow $250,000 to completely change my life and build out my dream business, and let's say it didn't work out and all I get is a slap on the wrist, my assets are protected through a bankruptcy lawyer, and all that happened was my credit got tanked, but I was able to quickly boost it up. Like personally for me, I don't think that's that bad at all. For me, I think that's worth it to take the risk. Obviously, be smart about this, guys. I am by no means a bankruptcy lawyer, not providing any legal advice, but just want to kind of put it into perspective of some stories that I've heard through other people. Luckily, I haven't had to go through that, but just know this same process that I'm telling you, this is what I use as well. So literally just knowing this, I already know it's going to be super valuable because I guarantee most of you guys have never even thought about how important it is to apply in the right sequential order, know where to pass it off. You could apply for the same cards with a new business, or making sure the debt goes onto a smaller bank and going through bankruptcy. So this is super huge for you guys. So Bottom line, this isn't about being reckless. It's about knowing the game and moving smart. So let's get you guys funded. Let's continue going through these resources, and you know we have you guys covered. So as usual, peace out, much love, stay beautiful. We'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.